What's one cringe-inducing memory from years ago that you still can't get out of your head?
Story 1. In first grade, I moved to a new school in a small town. About 2 months in, I started suddenly losing bowel control for no apparent reason, completely watery, with intense abdominal cramps. I was shy and hadn't made any friends yet. I was so embarrassed that I'd just sit there in my own mess until the teacher noticed. This happened every single day. Eventually, they sent me to the principal's office, and the nurse, teacher, and my parents all thought I was just seeking attention. Even though I packed 2 extra pairs of underwear and pants each day, I would still end up soaked by the end of school. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept getting in trouble. I was kept in from recess and had to sit alone in the hallway whenever I ran out of clothes. I had to eat lunch by myself and spent at least half my days sitting in the hallway staring at the wall. When my parents finally took me to the doctor, they discovered I had a strange intestinal infection with no known cure. It eventually went away. So, for 1 month at my new school, I was that shy, weird kid who smelled bad and couldn't participate in any activities. I graduated high school 12 years later with the same small class of students. It wasn't until our 10-year reunion that one of my classmates, now a nurse, told me they had all felt so bad for me. They never brought it up because they thought I was being abused after seeing me sitting alone in the hallway in my soaked clothes. That moment restored my faith in how kind other kids can be. Story 2. I was actually on the other side of this situation for once. I had some repair guys over to fix a few things around my house, and everything went fine. Later that night, I grabbed my phone and saw a few missed text messages. They were from one of the repair guys, clearly meant for his girlfriend. Pretty explicit texts, followed by, "OMG, I'm so sorry, those were for someone else." I have a terrible habit of leaving my phone in my room for hours without checking it, so I didn't see the messages until a couple of hours later. He was probably sitting there panicking because I hadn't responded, LOL. I just laughed and replied asking what site they wanted me to leave a review on, since they had asked before they left. Then I went ahead and left a nice review without mentioning the text at all. Honestly, I knew it was an accident. Stuff happens, and they did good work for a fair price, so there was no point in burning that bridge. Life is full of little mistakes. I'll admit I showed the messages to one of my friends when we went out for lunch, and we both had a good laugh about it. Kind of in that, oh, to be young again, way since she's married with a kid, and I'm basically an old, unwed hag. And yes, I did have the same guy come by to do more work later. No awkwardness on my end at all, because finding a repairman who does quality work for a fair price is so hard. I do feel bad, though, thinking he probably spent hours freaking out after realizing what he'd sent, and then maybe thought I asked about the review site because I was going to blast him online. But nah, mistakes happen, and most of the time, they're just not worth going nuclear over. Story 3. Back in 8th grade, we were taking a standardized test. On the first day, I wasn't feeling great, but the teacher and administrators were very clear about the rules. We weren't allowed to leave the room for any reason. They even rearranged our desks so no one could sit close enough to cheat or copy answers. My desk ended up facing one of the popular girls at the time. We were friends, and still are to this day, despite what happened. About 20 minutes into the test, my stomach started gurgling, and I knew I was going to throw up. But the teachers had drilled it into my head that no one was allowed to leave, and I somehow thought that even being sick didn't count as an exception. I tried to hold it in, thinking I could manage until the test was over. Yeah, that didn't go as planned. I ended up throwing up directly onto my friend. The last thing I saw before bolting out the door was the horrified look on her face. As I ran down the hallway to the bathroom, I noticed another guy running right behind me. When we got there, he told me he had thrown up too, apparently just from seeing and smelling what happened. Oh man, I wanted to transfer schools right then and there. Years later, I found out people still remembered the kid who stopped standardized testing that year. Apparently, the incident even got the district some extra funding. Moral of the story? Tests are the worst. Story 4. Anyone else feel like they have way too many cringe memories? My biggest one has to be the night I decided to go to a party on the first anniversary of a traumatic event. I ended up chugging nearly a whole bottle of liquor and eating an unknown number of pot brownies. Honestly, even the way I ate them was embarrassing. They were so crumbly that I was scooping them up with both hands like some kind of animal, smiling with crumbs and chocolate all over my face. Yikes. Long story short, I started having flashbacks and ended up with 4 people I barely knew trying to calm me down while I cried and screamed in the host's shower, begging them to take me to the hospital. Every time someone tried to touch or talk to me, I reacted even worse, like they were trying to hurt me. Eventually, my best friend got me home safely, and I didn't drink for over a year after that. When I think back on it, it feels like watching an out-of-body experience, pure, unbearable cringe. I can still picture the looks on their faces and how completely out of control I was. To make things worse, one of the girls spread a rumor that I had taken acid and freaked out because I'd lost control of my bowels, which wasn't true at all. I'm a kind, calm, and soft-spoken person, so thinking about anyone seeing me like that still makes me cringe hard. So here's a reminder. You never really know what someone else has been through, and everyone deserves a little kindness and the benefit of the doubt. Story 5. My friends and I, who happen to share the same last name even though we're not related, were at our confirmation ceremony. It's one of the Catholic sacraments where you attend Mass, and the priest lightly taps your cheek as part of the ritual. There were 2 guys and 1 girl in our group, and I had a crush on the girl. My guy friend was in a sort of mutual thing with another girl, and during the event, our friend asked him if he'd confessed his feelings yet. He said he had. Since my guy friend knew I liked the girl, he started teasing me about it. Then the girl said something like, "Confess or no guts." And for some reason, I actually started considering it. So there I was, sitting in the middle of Mass, debating whether it was a good time to confess my feelings. After psyching myself up for about a minute, I actually did it. Of course, it went horribly wrong. I completely flopped, and she didn't have any feelings for me beyond friendship. So there I was, sitting awkwardly in church right after confessing to her, while Mass was still going on. We talked about it later, and everything was fine between us. That same day, I went to watch Infinity War with my family and tried my best not to look sad the whole time. We're still best friends, and now it's just an inside joke among the 3 of us. Story 6. I used to be a stay-at-home mom. I have a son with special needs, sublet a place from my mom, and lived close to everything I needed, so we didn't spend much and managed just fine. It's also relevant that I had weight loss surgery in 2012 called the duodenal switch. Basically, they remove about 70% of your stomach and reroute your intestines so your body only uses the large intestine. The result? Massive and fast weight loss, but also horrendously bad gas and bowel movements. Like, could be used in chemical warfare bad. I can't pass gas in public without risking mass panic. When my husband and I separated, I had to get a job and a car. I started working at a marketing company where a friend of mine worked. It turned out to be mostly cold calling for cheap promotional items like custom pencils and even police caution tape. The office was in a cool downtown building with exposed brick and an open floor plan. The bathrooms were side by side at one end of the room, and everyone's desks were spread out across the space. One morning, my stomach was very angry at me. Maybe it was the coffee or the cigarette I had before work. Either way, trouble was brewing. Unfortunately, the workday had already started, and there were no other bathrooms in the building. I could have asked the medical scrubs store below us to use theirs, but I didn't want to ruin their day or their business, so that wasn't an option. I finally worked up the courage to go. Thankfully, they had aerosol spray, so I did a little pre-spraying into the bowl, like that poo-pourri stuff, gassed the air a bit with the fake scent, and got down to business. When I finished, I already knew it was bad. The bathroom smelled like someone had detonated a septic tank half filled with sulfur and wrapped in a family of skunks. Even after drowning it in vanilla Glade, there was no hiding the destruction. I just thought, whatever. Other women work here too. Maybe no one will say anything. I walked back to my desk on the opposite end of the room to continue training with my partner. Slowly but surely, the evidence began creeping through the air. One person complained about the smell, then another, until the whole office knew that something catastrophic had happened in that bathroom. I was trying so hard not to laugh, because I have the sense of humor of an 8-year-old boy sometimes, while also trying not to cry from sheer embarrassment, hoping no one would figure out it was me. The best part? My best friend worked there too, and she'd experienced this level of destruction before. She knew. She just sat silently across the room, not saying a word. We had a good laugh at lunch that day, but I spent the entire morning sweating bullets, praying my secret would stay safe. Story 7. I don't know if this is the kind of cringe you're looking for, but here it goes. I grew up poor, Not so poor that I fully understood it, but enough to realize I didn't have as much as other kids. My grandpa had been in a bad accident when he was 30, which left him with serious back and hip problems. For as long as I can remember, he struggled with jobs and money. At the time of this story, I think he was working as a taxi driver, and I was about 8 or 9 years old. When I was a kid, I loved Hostess snowballs. I didn't get them often, so whenever I did, it felt like the best day ever. One night around 8 p.m., my grandpa drove up to my grandma's house, where my mom, grandma, aunt, and I lived. He was such a kind man that everyone would always come outside to say hi when he stopped by. That night, he said he just wanted to drop off a surprise for me. I remember being cranky because it was a school night, almost bedtime, and I'd just finished dinner. I wasn't disrespectful. My mom didn't tolerate that. But when I got cranky, I'd go quiet and distant. So I walked up to the car, and my mom told me to give him a kiss. I didn't want to because it was summer, and he was sweating, and I hated the taste of salt on his cheek. My mom gave me that look, the you better or else one, so I kissed him anyway. He gently said, "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," and scolded my mom for forcing me. Then he reached over to the passenger seat and pulled out a pack of snowballs, my favorite, and held them out to me. I didn't take them. I said, "I'm not hungry, we just ate." The look on his face in that moment is burned into my memory forever. I can still feel the warm exhaust from his car on my legs, the cool summer breeze in my hair, and the single bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. His hand froze midair, holding the snowballs, and I remember my mom pinching me hard, but it was already too late. His expression didn't change, but the sadness in his eyes said everything. After what felt like an eternity, maybe only a second or two, I quickly reached for them and said, "But I'll eat them tomorrow. You know these are my favorite. Thank you, I love you." I can't even remember what happened next, how he left, if he smiled again. But that look of quiet disappointment is something I'll never forget. Looking back now, knowing how little money he had, and that he went out of his way just to bring me my favorite treat, I still haven't forgiven myself for how ungrateful I was in that moment. Story 8. Back when I was in 9th grade, around 1989 or 1990, I was in math class. The teacher had us working in math workbooks, and if we needed anything, like a ruler, compass, or protractor, we had to go up to her desk and ask. I was working on a geometry problem and needed a protractor, so I got in line with a few other students waiting to talk to her. Now, this was around the age when hormones really started kicking in. I remember looking at one girl in front of me who was wearing a white shirt, and I could clearly see the outline of her bra underneath. Then I glanced at another girl behind her, the most attractive girl in the class, and realized I could see hers too because she was also wearing a white shirt. At this point, I was definitely getting flustered and, well, physically reacting. When it was finally my turn to talk to the teacher, I looked down at her. She was sitting at her desk, and I could see a bit of her cleavage. That didn't help my situation at all. My brain was completely short-circuiting. She looked up and asked, "What do you need?" And instead of saying, "I need a protractor," I blurted out, "I need a bra." I realized what I'd just said and immediately turned bright red, stammering, "I mean, a protractor. I need a protractor." She just gave me this look and said calmly, "Okay, you need to relax." It's been decades, and I still cringe every time I think about that moment. Story 9. This happened a little over a year ago. My wife and I were on our honeymoon in Europe, and a few days into the trip we went to eat at a nice, somewhat touristy restaurant. After we finished our meal, we sat and waited for the check. And waited some more. We waited so long that the staff actually started cleaning up for the night, literally around us. But for some reason, they didn't touch our table or the neatly stacked plates my wife had arranged. I made pointed eye contact with several servers, clearly trying to get someone's attention, but after sitting there for over an hour being ignored, I was beyond frustrated. For some reason that still baffles me, it never crossed my mind to just call out to one of them. You know, the simple, reasonable thing to do. Instead, I just grabbed our things and walked out, with my wife following behind. I've never dined and dashed before, and I don't think of myself as the kind of person who would, but in that moment, I was just angry. About 20 feet outside the restaurant, a server ran after us, and we got into a shouting match. Thankfully, another commerce staff member intervened, and I went back inside to pay what I owed. I still think about that night from time to time. While I'm still annoyed by how the staff handled things, I also know now that I was completely in the wrong. The rest of our honeymoon went great, but that one night still lingers in my memory, and I feel genuinely ashamed every time I think about it. Story 10. I was about 11 and completely obsessed with drawing. I carried a sketch pad and pencil with me everywhere. At the time, I was going through a phase where I loved drawing women in dancing costumes because I imagined wearing those outfits when I grew up. The only problem was, I couldn't figure out how to draw an adult woman's body accurately. I just didn't understand what was going on in the chest area. Every time I tried to draw a strapless dress, it looked weird, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to draw cleavage. This was the late 70s, so there was no internet to look it up. That summer, I went to a day camp with a bunch of other kids my age. There was this older hippie-looking guy, maybe in his 30s, who worked there and sometimes supervised us during field trips. He liked to draw too, and he was actually really good. I noticed a few times that when he thought no one was watching, he would sketch naked women, but he always hid the drawings quickly if one of us kids came close. One day, a group of us were hanging around him while he was sketching, and he asked what he should draw. I saw my chance to finally get the answers I needed, so I blurted out, loud and clear, "Draw a naked woman." Everything went silent. The guy looked uncomfortable and started mumbling something. I didn't catch on at all. I thought he just needed some encouragement. So I doubled down and said, "I've seen you draw them. You can draw one now." He looked even more awkward and made more nervous noises. I couldn't understand why he wouldn't just do it. Finally, another kid said, "Draw a dog," or something like that, and he jumped right into drawing it. I remember being so offended and frustrated. How was I ever supposed to figure out how to draw dancing women correctly if no one would show me what was going on? So I stood up, stomped off, and said loudly as I walked away, "Fine, I'll just draw my own naked woman then." Yeah, it took me a few years to realize what was actually happening in that moment, and I still cringe every time I think about it. Story 11. I was at a hypnotist show once, and the performer asked for volunteers. I raised my hand and even dragged my brother up with me. The hypnotist took all of us volunteers backstage to prepare us, swinging pocket watches in front of our faces, having us repeat phrases with our eyes closed, and the whole stereotypical routine. At the end, he gave us a trigger word that was supposed to instantly put us into a deep, suggestible trance once we were back on stage. After the prep, my brother admitted he wasn't hypnotized at all and wouldn't respond to the trigger word. The hypnotist told him to go sit back down in the audience. I knew I wasn't hypnotized either, but for some reason, I decided to play along. So we went back on stage and the show began. The hypnotist told us to pretend to smoke weed, ride invisible horses, hug each other, and do all kinds of random things. I started getting really self-conscious in front of the massive crowd, and instead of just following along normally, I completely overdid it. I pretended to hump someone instead of riding a horse, exaggerated like crazy when smoking, and even started pushing the other hypnotized people. I basically turned myself into a complete idiot in front of everyone. Eventually, the hypnotist had enough of me and kicked me off the stage, but not before making fun of me in front of the whole crowd. There were about 3,000 people there, including my parents. My dad was mortified. It's been about 20 years since that happened, and honestly, I still lose sleep thinking about it sometimes. Story 12. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, around 6 or 7 years old, though I don't remember exactly. It was midday recess, and our elementary school separated the younger kids into a courtyard area surrounded by classrooms. Back then, I was desperate for attention and approval. Thankfully, I've mostly outgrown that, and I do just about anything to make people laugh. There was this sandbox, basically 4 wooden planks screwed together and set into the ground. My friends and I were digging underneath one of the boards for reasons only kids understand. At some point, we managed to make a hole just big enough for a small child's head. One of my friends said, "I think I can fit my head in there." And, trying to be the hero, I went, "Step aside, I got this." Or something equally dumb but confident. So, I shoved my head into the hole. With a bit of wiggling and determination, I managed to get it in, to everyone's amazement. It was a perfect fit, until it was time to pull it back out. My ear caught on the wooden plank, and that's when panic hit. I was stuck. My head was literally stuck in the sandbox. And right then, the bell rings. My friends start trying to pull me out with all the combined strength of a group of 2nd graders, so basically none. A playground supervisor, who, yes, had been watching this whole disaster unfold, walks over and tells us recess is over. I shriek, in the highest-pitched voice imaginable, that I'm stuck. Cue teacher panic. There's a weird call on the walkie-talkie, and within minutes, teachers and the vice principal come running over to dig me out by hand. After a few long, mortifying minutes, they managed to free me, cheering like they'd just rescued someone from a natural disaster. And there I was, covered head to toe in sand, surrounded by several classes of laughing kids peering out the classroom windows. They called my parents, and I got sent home for the day, with McDonald's for lunch, which was honestly the only good part. From that day on, I was the kid who got his head stuck in the sandbox. If you're thinking, that's not so bad, kids won't remember that. Well, fast forward about 15 years. I had moved to a completely different city, living my adult life, totally past it, or so I thought. Then one day, I get a Facebook message from someone I vaguely recognize. It says, "This might sound weird if it's not you, but did you get your head stuck in a sandbox when you were in elementary school?" Me. Yes, unfortunately, that was me. That memory still haunts me to this day. Story 13. I met Nick Wozniak, one of the artists behind Shovel Knight, at Nintendo's indie event at PX West a few years ago. They were running a contest for the game, and I ended up being one of the winners. The plan was for them to give me the prizes at PX the next day, but I didn't have a ticket for that day. Nick, being the absolute legend that he is, just gave me his phone number and told me to call him tomorrow so he could meet me outside the convention and make sure I got my stuff. He followed through, met up with me, and I remember thinking, wow, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Later that day, I texted him to say thanks and mentioned how my kids saw the Plague Knight shirt they gave me and went, "Eh." Just like in the game. He replied with a simple LOL or something like that. And that's when my brain decided to make things awkward. I suddenly got super self-conscious, thinking I was being annoying or starstruck. So I texted him something like, "Sorry, I'll delete your number. I don't want to bother you," just to not come off weird. He replied saying it was fine and that I didn't need to do that. But at that point, I'd already spiraled too deep into the awkwardness and didn't know how to recover. So I just never said anything else. Now, that memory lives rent-free in my head every time I go back to PX. Because he's always there, and he still remembers who I am. I don't even know if he recalls that exchange, but man, it would have been so much cooler if I hadn't made it awkward and had just acted like a normal person. Story 14. I was hanging out with one of my close friends when she mentioned that someone we both knew, though she was much closer to, had invited us over to her place. When we got there, other people were already there, all of them super popular. One of them was the host's incredibly attractive older brother. We started playing this intense card game, and everyone was having a great time. I was a senior in high school back then, and even though I had plenty of friends, I always got nervous around new people, especially the cool crowd. So the fact that I was relaxed, laughing, and actually fitting in felt amazing. And then it happened. I laughed so hard that let's just say I bled through my tampon, and maybe leaked a little pee too. I felt it immediately and realized the cushioned chair I was sitting on had absorbed both. Pure panic. Trying to stay calm, I said, "Oh geez, I told my mom I'd pick up my little sister from her friend's house by now." "Hey, friend's name, you good if I head out?" She said. "Oh yeah, for sure. I'll catch you later." So I stood up, scooting the chair under the table as far as possible to hide the cushion. "Okay, see you guys. Thanks for having me." The hot older brother smiled and said, "It was nice meeting you. We'll have to do this again sometime." Me, walking backward toward the door, pretending everything was normal. "Yeah, for sure." Thankfully, I was wearing black jeans, so the stain wasn't visible when I checked the hallway mirror before leaving. I ran to my car, drove straight home, and sat in the shower, fully clothed, jeans and all, just staring into the drain in total horror. We, of course, never did this again. No one has ever mentioned it to me, and since it was summer, we all went off to college shortly after. But to this day, I still cringe thinking about the moment they must have discovered that bloody, urine-soaked cushion and realized exactly who was responsible. Story 15. At the start of my last year of secondary school, we were asked to write down our goals for the year. I wrote basic stuff like pass my exams, get better at football, learn piano, etc. When we were done, the teacher told us to keep those lists to guide us through the year. I thought, oh, okay. and didn't think much of it after that. Now, I'd had a crush on this girl in my class for about a year, but I kept it super low-key. She was way out of my league, and I was certain she'd never feel the same, so I just let it be. That first day, though, our teachers were still getting things ready, so we spent a lot of time hanging out as a big group. I was, of course, doing the occasional awkward staring at my crush while trying to blend into the main group of the class. I managed to talk to her for a few minutes. Small talk, nothing major, but it was enough to have me floating the rest of the day. When I got home that evening, for some reason I pulled out that goals list again and added her name to it, complete with little hearts. A few days later, some students were asked to stay after school to help set up decorations for the New Year celebration, and they needed volunteers. My crush said she'd help, and even though I never volunteered for stuff like that, I jumped in too. A few of the popular kids stayed behind just to hang out. At one point, the class rep mentioned that part of the decorations needed someone who could draw, and since I'm decent at it, I offered, trying to sound casual, of course. And just like that, I was working side by side with my crush, talking and laughing a bit while sketching things out. It was honestly perfect. Then disaster struck. There was this girl in our class, kind of a tomboy, a bit of a bully, who loved messing around and going through people's stuff for fun. Everyone tolerated it as long as she didn't steal or break anything. For some reason, she started rummaging through our bags that day, and just as I realized what she was doing, I remembered the list. Too late. I turned around just in time to see her holding it. She started reading it out loud in disbelief before passing it around. I froze, completely stiff. It eventually made its way to my crush. I couldn't look up. I just stared at my drawing, my heart pounding. The room fell silent except for a few whispers. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and I wanted to disappear. Somehow, I forced myself to finish my drawing, grabbed my bag, and the cursed list that had somehow made it back to my table, and left without saying a word. The classroom was painfully quiet. When I got home, I nearly cried from embarrassment. I actually considered skipping school the next day. I crumpled the list and threw it away. That night, I finally texted my crush. "Sorry about just now. I never wanted you to know." She replied, "No worries. Just pretend it didn't happen," smiley face. I knew she didn't feel the same way, but it still stung. Thankfully, everyone seemed to silently agree to just forget about it. I avoided her for months, but eventually we went back to being normal classmates. I still liked her though. Now, almost 10 years later, I sometimes remember that moment and cringe so hard I want to bury myself. Every time I think of it, I can't help screaming internally. Why did I write her name? Why did I leave that list in my bag? Why did that girl have to go through it? WHYYYY. Story 16. Ever since first grade, I was friends with a boy who lived a few houses down the street. He was mid-functioning autistic. He could hold conversations, but would get flustered easily, zone out, or have sudden emotional reactions. He also had bad asthma and other health issues, so I'd often sit with him during his breathing treatments. We became best friends. We went to the movies together, played video games, went laser tagging, and visited the zoo or circus with each other's families. I'd pick him up every morning so we could walk to school together, and after class, I'd help him pack up his things before walking home with him. His parents never had more kids because of his autism, so his mom kind of saw me as a daughter. She'd buy little girl craft kits and sometimes do crafts with me one-on-one while he watched TV. I didn't realize it then, but I was probably filling a bit of a void for them. As we got older, things naturally changed. He joined the special education program, and I was placed in advanced classes. We still hung out, but not as often, especially after middle school started and we no longer walked home together. Still, every year he invited me to his birthday parties, and I always went. I was the only girl there, surrounded by his classmates, and even when others teased him, I always had his back. In high school, he attended a vocational program while I started taking college-level classes at a local university. We barely saw each other anymore, but I never missed his birthdays. When he graduated, I made sure to go to his party and even brought him a small gift. As soon as I arrived, he pulled me aside, told me he was in love with me, and asked if I'd date him. The timing couldn't have been worse. I'd just broken up with my boyfriend a week earlier. I turned him down gently, explaining that I cared about him but didn't see him that way. Then he asked if he could move in with me at college to keep me company, and I had to say no again because I lived in a dorm. It was heartbreaking. I felt awful for hurting him on what was supposed to be such a happy day. A few months later, his parents got divorced. He reached out to me a few times after that while I was in college, telling me he was struggling, depressed, unable to keep a job as a janitor. And I tried to be supportive, but it always felt like there wasn't much I could really do to help. The last time I saw him was at our old neighbor's wedding. I was playing piano for the ceremony, and the bride seated me at his table along with my new husband, who he refused to acknowledge. He looked rough. When I asked how he was doing, he mumbled, "I've been in a pretty dark place the last few years." The DJ was loud, so I misheard him and replied cheerfully, "I'm so happy for you. Tell me more about it." My husband leaned over and said loudly, "He said dark place." I wanted to crawl under the table. The whole night was just painfully awkward. I still think about him sometimes and wish things had turned out better for him. I wonder if I was as kind and patient as I remember being, or if I could have done more. I really hope he's doing okay, wherever he is. Story 17. One semester in college, I decided I wanted to try something new, something that might help me get some exercise and maybe even make new friends. So I signed up for a social dance class. It was taught by dance majors who showed us the basics of styles like waltz, swing, and cha-cha. At the time, I was thinner than I am now, but still probably considered overweight by most people. I had more confidence back then, though, and honestly just wanted to have fun. Throughout the semester, I didn't really make friends. There was one guy who took the class with his girlfriend, and he was genuinely nice to me. Whenever we had partner tests, he'd do his turn with her first, then volunteer to be my partner so I could take mine too. I was friendly with other people in class, but it never went beyond small talk. I knew I wasn't the best dancer, but I was enjoying myself, and I thought that was enough. Everything changed at the end of the semester. The class had a big final event, a required dance competition. Everyone had to choose between the cha-cha and the waltz, find a partner, and perform. I wanted to do the cha-cha because I was awful at waltzing, but actually enjoyed that one. The guy who had been nice to me was also doing cha-cha, but obviously with his girlfriend. So there I was, the only girl left without a partner, along with one other girl in the same situation. The teacher, a kind guy, but honestly pretty clueless, asked the guys in the waltz group who would volunteer to be her partner. About 5 hands went up immediately. Then he asked who would volunteer to be my partner. No one raised their hand. It felt like someone punched me in the stomach. My face went hot, my heart started pounding, and all I could think was, please let this be over. The teacher, trying to lighten the mood, said, "Oh, looks like you get to pick." I froze. How could I possibly pick when it was clear none of them even wanted to dance with me for 5 minutes? I just stammered and stood there, humiliated. After an agonizing minute, the teacher finally said, "Okay, we'll figure it out later," and moved on. I wish I'd just grabbed my stuff and walked out, but I didn't. Instead, the teacher's assistant danced with me for the rest of class. I was shaking, trying not to cry, and failing. I remember hearing him quietly ask one of the guys afterward if he'd be my partner for the competition, and the guy reluctantly agreed. When I got back to my apartment, I broke down completely. I cried harder than I had in years. I kept wondering, was I really such a bad dancer that they couldn't stand to pair up with me? Or was it me? Was I just that unappealing? I didn't think so, but in that moment, it felt like confirmation that I was. At the competition, I danced with that guy and spent the whole night thanking him like he was doing me a huge favor. There was supposed to be another dance event later that semester, but I lied and told the teacher I was sick. He gave me the credit anyway. I also skipped the final celebration party. I wish I'd never taken that class. I went into it hoping to have fun, to meet people, to feel confident, and instead, I left feeling humiliated and worthless. I haven't danced since, and every so often, that memory pops back into my head, and I still cringe at myself, at those people, and at how awful that moment felt. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.